Palmer's now played in well over 20 Masters. He's won it 4 times, and it has been a grueling examination of his skill and his bulldog temperament.
When I won the first 3 Masters, each time it was a panic. I was nervous. I was panic-stricken coming into the last few holes and wondered what was going to happen next. I lost it once in '61 by that very thing happening to me.
As Palmer hits his second shot on the 18th, he needs only a par to win. He traps it, the same trap which Player earlier blasted out of. It's well known few are better at hitting from the sand, so Palmer's followers are not concerned. But he has exploded too strongly, burying the ball far across the green. It'll be impossible to get that par 4 now, but he still has a chance to tie Player with a bogey 5.
Player watched from the sidelines, and television watched him, and this was for that fatal bogey.
And here's the end of the golf drama. Palmer with a double bogey 6 is finishing with a 281 and has to settle for a second place tie.
Was really beginning to wonder if there was ever going to be a time when I might stroll around the Masters and feel like I was going to win for sure. And finally, of course, it came in '64.
15th hole, 3rd round.
Palmer had shared the first round lead and forging on, and encouraged by Bob Jones, who was now confined to watching things from a cot, he stormed into the last round.
Here's Palmer at 9, his second shot. Looking good. Incredible backspin.
And eventually, the final hole.
That's his second shot. About 25 feet away and getting closer all the time. He won the championship in '58, '60, '62. And now '64. A total of 276, a final round of 70.
Now we were in the years of the so-called Big Three. Palmer, Player of South Africa, first foreign winner thanks to Palmer's 1961 disaster, and Jack Nicklaus.
Nicklaus sinks it, and by the margin of 1 stroke, at 286 total, he's the new Masters champion. Arnold Palmer helps him put on the green jacket, symbolic of Masters victory. At 23, Jack Nicklaus from Columbus, Ohio, is the youngest golfer to win the title.
That was in 1963. It was the herald of the age, the incomparably long age of Nicklaus. He won again in 1965 in a style that inspired Bob Jones to say, "Mr. Nicklaus plays a game with which I am unfamiliar." And after a playoff with Gabe Brewer and Tommy Jacobs, he won in 1966 as well, the first man to do it 2 years in a row. And most years since then, the Masters has produced its dependable dramatic touches on the course and off. In 1966, Brewer had lost on the last hole. And now, a year later, with his wife agonizing on the sidelines, he putts for the title. In 1968, there was a famous mishap. Roberto de Vicenzo gave himself a 4 instead of a 3 on the 17th hole, and the title went by default to Bob Goalby. And in 1972, Nicklaus again for the 4th time. By that time, the now famous event was clouded by a personal tragedy. Bob Jones had always attended his own tournament, a natural hero, for his charm and gentleness as a man, as well as the memory of the golden years when he was the best golfer there was. He played in several Masters. It never finished higher than 13th, which was hardly surprising in a man who had said that once the tension of competitive golf was over, he was content to play for the company of his friends and for delight in the game itself.
A tremendous golfer, a very fine gentleman, and a man who contributed an awful lot towards golf and in life in general.
Never did I play with a greater sportsman, a man that was so fair with his opponent and so considered. He had a very bad break in life, but I never saw a more courageous man.
From the 1940s on, he'd been increasingly troubled by a rare spinal ailment which drastically affected his nervous system. And his later years were brave to bear. The alliance of Jones and Roberts that created the course and the Masters ended just before Christmas in 1971, when Jones, for too long a helpless cripple, died at the age of 68. If Jones's influence on the game is still memorable, he has in this place still a haunting presence in the festival air and the general geniality and the good behavior of the crowds. You know, one year when Arnold Palmer carried usually about half the crowd around with him and Nicklaus was coming up, there was a time when Nicklaus addressed a putt and somebody in the crowd shouted out, "Miss it." Jones heard about this and he wrote down a sentence and he had it printed on every admission ticket to the next Masters, and it's still there. In golf, customs of etiquette and decorum are just as important as the rules governing play. It is appropriate for spectators to applaud successful strokes in proportion to difficulty, but excessive demonstrations by a player or his partisans are not proper because of the possible effect upon other competitors. Such occurrences have been rare at the Masters, but we must eliminate them entirely if our patrons are to continue to merit their reputation as the most knowledgeable and considerate in the world. And it bears the signature, Robert Tyre Jones, Jr., President, Augusta National Golf Club, because years before, the board had passed a resolution in these words.
It has been well and truly said that every great institution is the lengthened shadow of a man. So it is with the Augusta National Golf Club, the man being Robert Tyre Jones, Jr., and it is desired to provide for his action as president in perpetuity.